Climate change is real, okay? Greenhouse gases are increasing our atmosphere. There are several sectors which are responsible for those greenhouse gas productions, and their transport and their energy generation, but agriculture is a big one, specifically big for us here in Northern Ireland. If we reckon about 28% of our greenhouse gases are caused from agriculture. So the site where we're talking from here in AFBI Hillsborough, in the Environment and Renewable Energy Centre, was developed around about 2008 to look into and develop what can agriculture do on farm, within our farms in Northern Ireland, to combat some of these greenhouse gases. What can we do to reduce the greenhouse gas or the carbon footprint of our agricultural enterprises? So we have things like biomass combustion, and we have other renewable energy technologies, but one specific one is anaerobic digestion. And with anaerobic digestion, we'll discuss this hopefully through this video, with anaerobic digestion we will be using agricultural residues, and we'll be adding in there other energy crops in order to produce gas which we can use to substitute for our imported fossil fuels. Of course, so far we've been talking about the monodigestion of slurry, okay? So slurry, don't forget, it's the waste from the animals that have already gone out and eaten all the grass and the concentrates and all the good material out there that they've been eating. Everything that's left over after they've taken all the goodness and all the calorific value, as much as they can economically, from that particular feedstock, that's what we've been putting through the AD plant. So it stands to reason that when we only monodigest slurry, we would only get in our plant here at Hillsborough about 300 cubic meters of biogas per day. Now, if we co-digest that with some co-digestible feedstock, such as silage or grass, which we produce here in the farm ourselves, we could increase that output to maybe about 1,000 cubic meters of biogas per day. That's a tripling of the energy that we can actually produce from the same infrastructure. You can see how the whole economics and benefits improve no end. While we're on co-digestion, there are a number of organic materials that are indeed or could indeed be recycled through anaerobic digestion. They can be food waste. They can be food waste from supermarkets or processors, food waste that's out of date or unusable for one particular or other. They can be also in agri-food processing industries, where quite often some kind of aerobic treatment is used in order to treat the wastewater before it's discharged. It will generate a sort of microbial sludge, and that sludge itself will find its way to AD plants as well. It's a very good food resource. Waste oils, waste fats. In other countries, not in Northern Ireland actually, but other parts of the UK, sewage sludge will be anaerobic digested thermophilically, which actually means that the sewage sludge itself will not only provide natural gas for energy, but it will also, the high temperatures, 55 or so degrees, will actually aid in neutralizing the pathogenicity of that particular sewage sludge itself, enabling it then to be onward used, potentially even in agriculture.
So on the AFBI farm here, we have about 16,000 cubic meters or tons of slurry to manage, mostly from housed animals that are part of the research program here: dairy cows, beef cows and pigs. In 2008, the whole interest in anaerobic digestion in Northern Ireland was around monodigestion of cow slurry, and mainly dairy cow slurry, because a lot of the big dairy farms had a lot of that slurry available for energy production. So we set up an AD plant here on the farm to take the slurry from 300 dairy cows, that was the size of our herd at that time, as a monodigested AD feedstock. So Chris has already talked a wee bit about that. That was fine. So for the first couple of years that we ran the plant, we monodigested cow slurry, producing between 250 and 300 cubic meters of biogas every day. But then we got a lot of interest from farmers who wanted to adopt this technology on their own farms as to how we could go about co-digestion. And again, Chris has explained that when you add more organic matter, more solids into the AD system, you actually produce more gas. So we started to co-digest after 2 years with grass silage. Basically, we draw slurry out from our animal housing. There are underground tanks below the animal houses, draw it out in slurry tankers, and then that slurry is transported up to the anaerobic digestion plant. Each day, we pump 20 cubic meters of fresh slurry through the plant over a 24-hour period, and that's what is digested to produce the biogas. Of course, we also co-digest now with grass silage. So we have a 50 cubic meter reception tank where the slurry tankers bring the slurry up and place in the reception tank. And that then is pumped to a 200 cubic meter feedstock tank. And that tank holds about 10 days worth of slurry input feedstock for the plant itself. So we've got two main digestion tanks. We've got a primary digester and a secondary digester. And our primary digester is our more active tank, and that's where we produce most of our biogas. Now that's not a typical system. Normally if you have two tanks in an anaerobic digestion plant, they're both active and they're both there for maximum production of biogas. But ours is a research and development plant, so our secondary tank, which produces less biogas, is not a heated tank, which means that the activity, the microbiological activity in the tank is lower. And really we're looking at what's called fugitive gas production. But again, it's not something you would see commercially. So these two tanks are 650 cubic meter sized tanks. They contain 600 cubic meters or tons of anaerobic digestate, and then there's a 50 cubic meter head space in each tank to let the gas escape. And you'll see when you look at the tanks that there are pipes that come out the top of each tank and go down into what are called two gas mixing manifolds. So the biogas is actually drawn out the top of the tanks, down through these gas mixing manifolds, and then it's compressed and pumped in through the bottom of each tank. And that's how we actually mix the tank contents. It's what's called recirculated biogas mixing. So most other AD plants, certainly in Northern Ireland and throughout the world, have mechanical stirring systems within their tanks. We don't. We use this recirculated biogas mixing system because it uses lower energy and works as effectively as a mechanically stirred tank. So that keeps all of the biomass that we're pumping in, the slurry and the grass silage, in contact with the bacteria in suspension. The bacteria can then break down the biomass, and we've gone through the 4 different phases of anaerobic digestion, and from that produce the biogas. The majority of the biogas that comes out the top of each tank is then piped off to a gas storage bag. The gas holder is basically a double membrane bag. It holds 300 cubic meters of gas when it's full. It's double membrane because there is an inner gas bag that actually holds the gas, and the outer membrane is a protective membrane. Obviously, we don't want that inner membrane getting pierced and then the gas actually escaping. So when the gas bag is full, a signal is triggered and sent to our combined heat and power engine, and it switches on. And gas is pumped along a 400 meter line from the biogas plant to the engine. But the gas contains obviously the biogas, which is a mixture of methane and carbon dioxide, but also some hydrogen sulfide. And hydrogen sulfide, whenever it combusts in the engine, would become corrosive because it would form sulfuric acid. So we actually scrub out the hydrogen sulfide through a pair of filters which are packed with activated carbon. And this activated carbon absorbs the majority of the hydrogen sulfide in the gas. The main product that we've talked about from the anaerobic digester is the biogas, and again the main product in that is the biomethane, where the energy is. But of course there is a secondary product from the process, and that's anaerobic digestate. And anaerobic digestate is a very potent biofertilizer. So on the farm here we have about 350 hectares of grassland, and we use the anaerobic digestate from our AD plant to actually fertilize that grassland because it has a high nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium content, and these are very important plant nutrients, as well as a very high content of plant micronutrients, coming both from the slurry and also the grass silage feedstock that goes into the AD process itself. So this is an example of a digestate being tapped off from the AD plant. So there are 4 phases in anaerobic digestion. The first phase is hydrolysis. This is the breakdown of complex organic matter. The second phase is acetogenesis, and this is a fermentation step. And here we produce soluble organic molecules that become volatile fatty acids. The third step is acetogenesis, which is the production of acetic acid. And the final step is methanogenesis, and this is the actual production of the biogas, which is mainly biomethane and also carbon dioxide. So the first phase of anaerobic digestion is hydrolysis. And this is where the complex biopolymers in the feedstock, we're talking about the carbohydrates, the fats, and the proteins, are broken down into simpler molecules. So for example, carbohydrates from grass silage in the form of mainly celluloses are broken down into simple units, simple sugar units, such as glucose. The fats are broken down into glycerides, and the proteins are broken down into polypeptides and peptides.
Okay, so the second phase that goes on in the primary digester is acidogenesis. So what it's doing is it's taking all those breakdown products from the hydrolysis stage, and it is then converting those into volatile fatty acids. There are a number of other products that are created at the same time, such as ammonia and carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide, but essentially it's those fatty acids which then are the precursor and the substrate for the next set of bacteria. Okay, so then we move into the third phase of microbiology that occurs within the digester itself, and this is acetogenesis. And this is essentially taking the products from the last chemistry, which is basically fatty acids, and it's converting those into mainly acetic acid. There are a number of other products also created, such as hydrogen and carbon dioxide, but it's the acetic acid that's the important molecule that goes forward to the next stage. Okay, the final stage of anaerobic digestion now is methanogenesis, and here we're taking the acetic acid from the previous microbiology and we're converting that now into methane. And methane, of course, is the molecule we want because of its energy content. Methanogenesis, of course, produces the methane and the carbon dioxide. Now, methane is the energetic molecule, that's the one we're after. The CO2, which is non-energetic in these circumstances. Normally in Hillsborough, we're producing around about 60% methane and about 35% CO2. And there are a number of other small gases in there, like there's other volatile organic carbons, there's also a little bit of nitrogen, there's a little bit of hydrogen sulfide. H2S, of course, is that gas that smells of rotten eggs. We don't particularly like that. And also, it can be massively corrosive as well. It can form acids, and it can degenerate parts of your technology when you're actually converting the energy in a CHP unit. Okay, at this point, it's worth re-mentioning why we're doing all this. I think at the start of this video, we said there are a number of sectors which are responsible for producing high greenhouse gas emissions, and agriculture is indeed one of those. We're responsible for about 28% of greenhouse gas emissions in Northern Ireland. Here at AFBI, therefore, we are demonstrating the benefits of bioenergy and how it can displace fossil fuels, and how we can use these within an agricultural setting. Within this energy centre, we not only combust biogas from agri-wastes and residues, but we also combust biomass from residual biomass and purpose-grown energy crops. The willow currently used and combusted in this particular boiler has come from plantations of willow targeted within the AFBI Hillsborough site, and they intercept polluting runoffs into the environment, such as nutrients such as phosphorus. Instead of the nutrient running into streams, rivers and lakes, we actually use it to fertilise these crops. The crops, when harvested, they remove this nutrient and ultimately are combusted and then produce hot water. The hot water that's produced from the combustion of these energy crops then joins the hot water that's produced from the combined heat and power unit from the biogas, or indeed the gas biomass combustion unit from pure biogas. And this hot water is pumped around the AFBI Hillsborough site, where we've got about 2.5 kilometres of district heating. That 2.5 kilometres of district heating provides hot water for washing for the dairy, heating for the radiators, the rooms, the conference centres, even for drying biomass, and indeed, don't forget, the anaerobic digester needs to be kept warm so that microbiology continues efficiently, and it requires some heat as well. So overall here, what we've been discussing is what AFBI has been doing in terms of producing renewable energy and trying to offset some of the fossil fuel energy that we have been importing. So the 28% greenhouse gas that the agriculture sector has been responsible for producing over the recent years, how much of that can we offset by introducing sustainable renewable energy technologies? We've mentioned the biomass that we use in combustion boilers, and the fact that that biomass is now coming from environmental protection technologies, which we're demonstrating through the implementation of a number of EU-funded projects, such as EU WaterPro, EU Catchment Care, even EU Bryden Centre. These are helping to demonstrate and prove the potentials that these sustainable technologies have in making agriculture more sustainable.
So I hope that we've shown you today that the anaerobic digestion process has a lot of very important chemistry involved in it, and we have to monitor that chemistry to make sure that the process is stable and runs properly. But of course, AFBI is a very, very large organisation and encompasses many, many different areas of chemistry throughout the organisation.